What's up? It's Kevin Kenny. This is the Build Series. We're live in New York City, and we've got one of my favorite Build guests of all time sitting by my side. His new album, The Allegory, is out and available now. Give it up for Royce 5'9".
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me, sir.
Dude, thanks for coming back, man. For real.
Pleasure to see you, man.
I get complimented on our interview out in the streets thanks to you.
It was a good one. Thank you.
Yeah, I really, no, I mean, because you're a rare guest where nothing's off limits. You're always honest, and you're also very present. Sometimes you ask an artist a question, and they have some pre-prepared talking point. It's never like that with Royce. So I appreciate that.
I got too bad of a memory for that.
I guess we just had a round of applause. If I can call for another one and just say congratulations, because you really have, you continue to evolve and just up your game. And I think it's really rare. My favorite rapper of all time, maybe my favorite person of all time, is JayZ. And one of the main reasons.
We just became best friends.
Well, one of the main reasons is because it's so hard in art and hip hop to both entertain and teach at the same time. There's plenty that can do one or the other, but there's very few, if any, outside of Jay and maybe yourself, that can do both. And that's really what you do time and time again. I remember the last time you were on the show, you were talking about the Book of Ryan, and then this time, you know, it's a history course, it's a sociology course, and then it's just a great rap album. So
Thank you, man.
Congratulations. Was that the intent?
So much. Absolutely, absolutely. I believe that that kind of comes with time. You know, I think some artists are incapable of teaching while they're rapping because we haven't learned anything yet. So when I came into the game, maybe the first 10 years, everything was trial and error. And I just happened to be one of those guys who happened to learn a whole bunch of things from making a whole bunch of mistakes. So I kind of feel like we have I don't kind of feel like, I know that I feel like that we as OGs have an obligation to provide information to the next generation coming in so certain cycles don't repeat themselves.
I mean, there's plenty of people that come in the game and probably peers of yours that they make the same mistakes you do. They don't learn from them. What do you think enabled you to be able to learn from those mistakes you made?
I think I just got lucky, man. I think I just got lucky because it wasn't a lot of the time where I was out there, I was like not present. You know, I was like drinking every day, and I really think it was ordained by God for me to be here. You know, because I think a lot of the mistakes that I made, a lot of people wouldn't have been able to bounce back from. So I think me being able to bounce back from those mistakes, it's a greater purpose for me after those mistakes, and I'm aware of that. And that's why I've been going as hard as I've been going to provide that information, because it's not free. Success isn't free.
Right. I mean, you can actually like audibly hear that clarity in your music, which I think is so cool as a longtime fan. You've talked in previous interviews about how musically, professionally now, like you do everything with a purpose. You used to just do shit just to do shit, as you say, you know, in your own words. Have you seen that shift in your personal life as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'm a universe hippie as well, you know, so I feel like just doing things just to do them, letting the universe push you around is what I call that. And when you allow that to happen, you're kind of like crossing that bridge when you get there with everything. And if you can prepare yourself before you do things, why not do that? If you can arm yourself with the information, or if there's somebody who you have that's dear to you who's been through pretty much everything that you're going to go through, if they have that information and they're willing to give it to you, then, you know, you should probably take in that information. It just, you know, you're going to make the mistakes because that comes with it. I teach my youngins, my son, the younger artists that I mentor in my studio, I teach them to embrace the mistakes because it's just part of it. You know, everybody's afraid to make mistakes now. Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. It's just all about the way you bounce back. You know, like you said, JayZ, he's my favorite rapper too. He was a drug dealer, and he was able to turn that into a positive. In that case, it's okay to be a drug dealer, as long as you were able to turn it into a positive. You're just a drug dealer, and you just decide to be a drug dealer for life, that's not good. Right. You know what I mean? But if you're in that environment, and that's all you know, and then you somehow learn to grow out of the environment, and you're able to look at it in retrospect and say, oh, this is something I need to correct because this is what's destroying my community. And your perspective is changing on life because you're growing. You know what I mean? And you're able to turn that into a positive, and it turns into one of those stories, and it's a great thing.
You think there's a lot of, with maybe newer artists today in the game, do you see when you look out just as an OG, a lot of misunderstandings? Because you kind of talk about that a little bit on Dope Man on the record when you talk about the Dope Man. Do you find that people are misunderstanding the lesson of JayZ? Just as an example, but maybe misunderstanding a lot of lessons?
I've heard comments get made. But you know what? I mean, I think where I'm noticing that JayZ's at now, he's just in a place where it looks like he just wants to take steps now. And he's saying less and less. Sometimes, I'm a guy, I ramble. So, sometimes I find myself clarifying myself with certain things, and then I'm looking back at it and I'm watching it and I'm going, maybe I said too much. You know what I mean? So sometimes if you're of the thinking that I need to start just doing things and I need to be the change that I want to see, sometimes you just got to be willing to say a little bit less and just speak at the risk of maybe coming off as dismissive, as long as you know that you're going to get something done. And I think that's where he's at with it.
The Allegory started, the original idea, I understand, was like 3 to 4 track EP. But you couldn't, you struggle as an artist, you said, where you can't really find 3 to 4 tracks and form a complete thought.
Yeah.
In this day and age, right, it's a single-driven industry once again, and it just, there's like, people are just putting up songs. There's no really large bodies of work necessarily, or it's not a necessity, I should say. Why is it so important for you to form a complete thought with whatever you offer the audience?
Well, because it's a necessity. We're not being taught that it's a necessity, but it absolutely is. If you think about the most important albums, we can go back as far as you guys like. They're all complete thoughts. They're all classic albums, and they're all going to last for years to come. And as an artist, that's what you want to focus on. You want to focus on creating something that can serve you for the longest period of time, something that you created, that you can always sell, that you can always license, that's always going to stream. And if you just come in focusing on a single, that makes it a little bit harder for you to be able to maintain that over periods of times. Because, singles tend to, big singles tend to be just a product of what that time was. They tend to sound pretty nostalgic when you hear them in the future. But bodies of work, they seem to be relative to each generation. They transcend really well. So I think to kind of like encourage the younger kids to do that as opposed to only focusing on singles. Maybe a body of work that's pertinent with a great singles on it would serve you a little bit better.
And wouldn't you say that's one of maybe the misunderstandings out there? Because you touch on it in one of the tracks on the album where people, JayZ will preach, own your masters. Mm-hmm. But then if, what are those masters, right? Like, what is the value? You could wind up owning a whole bunch of nothing, right?
Yeah. If it doesn't age well.
Right.
If it doesn't age well, then it's just, if you can do nothing with it in 2 years, then okay, you own it. It's yours. But you owned it. It was your intellectual property when it was still in your brain.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the key is to get it out. Get it out of your mind and get it out and make it to where you put as much effort into it to make it sound like how it sounds in here. So it hits people like that. So it connects with people that way.
Yeah.
That way it transcends. And 2 generations from now, they're saying, oh, man, my dad put me up on the Chronic. I love the Chronic album, Dr. Dre, NWA. You know what I mean? And that's the reason why those classic albums will exist forever. Nas did, after 20 years of Illmatic, he headlined Coachella and perform the entire album on the Coachella stage, which is probably the biggest stage today. So if that's not telling, I don't know what else,
It wasn't just one single.
That's telling. Yes,
yes.
The
entirely produced by you.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
What made you want to get into producing? What brought that on, and when did this happen?
It snuck up on me. I was in the studio and I was just kind of like sitting around. I just finished my last album. It was called The Book of Ryan. It was like my most personal, self-defining album. I feel like I said everything I needed to say in terms of just introducing me to you. So I knew I didn't want to do another personal album. So I was sitting around. I was like, all right, what am I going to do? So somebody made a joke about going and buying a drum machine. And I'm extremely close with DJ Premier. I like to call his phone and prank him all the time. So I called him and I was like, listen, I just went to the store and I got a drum machine. I said, I got a drum machine and I'm on your ass. I just want you to know that. I'm becoming a producer now. So he was like, all right. So he sat on a FaceTime with me for 2 hours and walked me through how to use the MPC. And I just started practicing. One thing led to another. I came up with a beat that I actually felt comfortable rapping over, and I rapped over it. And that's how I ended up agreeing to do the EP, which was 3-4 songs. The Allegory wasn't in my head yet, even though I was reading the Allegory of the Cave Theory by Plato throughout this whole process. So that's kind of what inspired the album. So when I had those 3 songs and I couldn't figure out how to make it an EP, I kept adding to it, and then that put me into album mode. And then, so this is the first album that I'm saying has happened to me as opposed to me planning to do it. Yeah.
first song the first beat I should say that you made that you rapped over was "I Don't Age," right?
Yes. How'd you know that? You good, man. You good. Good.
Thank you. I'm curious because you've rapped over probably thousands of beats. I have to imagine, right, over your entire career. That's the first one you've ever rapped over that was your own. Is there almost like, and I'm not trying to over romanticize it, but the same way that you might have an additional affinity for, the first girl you ever fell in love with, or just these firsts in our lives are so sentimental to us. Was there an added sentimentality maybe to?
Oh, it's dear to my heart.
Is it?
Dear
I mean, no, all joking aside. I mean,
no, serious.
Yeah?
I may get a tattoo. I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely, that was definitely a moment. It was a proud moment for me, because success is subjective. It's extremely subjective. So, we look for those moments of fulfillment, and each moment is different to each individual. For me, upon completion is the most fulfillment for me. But that particular moment was extremely fulfilling, because I think I probably made like 1,000 beats, up until that point. And 800 of them were probably the worst beats you'll ever hear in your life. And that's just a testament to you have to start somewhere. Just going through that process and being okay with making each whack beat, just because I know in my mind at some point this is going to get better if I just keep practicing and practicing. Because it's like the musical inclination is there already. I kind of like know what I want it to sound like. I just couldn't figure out how to get it to sound like that. So it just came through repetition. It's just like Steph Curry shooting 1,000 jumpers before the game. Tip off, he gets the ball, he's not even thinking, he's just pulling. I want to get to that point with it, because I know some extremely masterful producers who can do that like that. It's just easy, second nature.
I mean, Premier, bro.
Yes,
I mean, you got a front row seat to that
yes,
guy's work.
yes,
It's incredible.
Yes.
How did you? I know it's been a minute since you first started rapping, but if you still have memories from that time, how do they compare to your first times just making beats?
It's a little different with the beat making process after so many years of going through the rapping process. So now I'm able to draw correlations between the two arts. They're two different things, but they're very similar in a lot of different ways. A lot of the same, similar nuances. So, when I was learning how to actually write raps, learning the different mechanics and stuff, that was more trial and error. Nobody to really teach me anything. I learned some things from Marshall here and there, bit of style here and there, you know what I'm saying? But other than that, I didn't really have any like moment or point of reference. Yeah. With the beat making process, I had tons of points of reference. I could call all my beat making friends, Bink, Mr. Porter, who's probably the best producer I've ever met in my life. He's in the B room in my studio. He gave me a clone of his laptop, which had all of his sounds in it dating back from 2013. So that's kind of like a cheat code. You ever played like the James Bond on Nintendo 64 and just got all the cheat codes? That's kind of like how I felt.
I like that. That's a good quote. Speaking of M, I didn't realize that you actually produced Darkness. I mean, you produced a number of tracks, 3, I believe, on M's new record.
I produced 2, yep.
Oh, 2, excuse me. But you produced Darkness, and that is just... I think that's M's best song since Stan. And the reason I say that is because it's incredible the 2 stories he tells in that song and how he makes it seamless, and it's incredible. I mean, I think that song should be studied just as Stan could. When you made the beat for him, did he tell you what he wanted to write about? Did he? And I guess maybe we should catch it up. If you're not familiar with Darkness, it touches on the 2017 Vegas shooting. Went top 10 on Billboard and caused controversy, but I think in kind of the best of ways, and brought a lot of attention to that issue. Did he tell you that's where he wanted to take that beat? How did that whole thing come about? I
just kind of lucked up. I was we had just got off tour. Just gotten off tour, and I was making beats. I was making a bunch of beats, and when I did that one, Simon and Garfunkel sample, Sound of Silence. And I was working on it, and I was like, this really sounds like something Marshall would like, So I sent it to him as a skeleton, and I was like, I want to send you this beat, see what you think. And I sent it to him, and he called me back the next day. He was like, yo, I need you to send me the stems to that beat. I think I wrote something to it. I'm gonna lay it down today. Now the stems is just every element in the beat, every piece in the beat. Basically, he wanted everything so he can have it on his board. So in case he wants to add something to it, he can do it. So Yeah, I sent it to him, and he recorded vocals to it, and he was like, yeah, I want you to come up and check it out when you get a chance. He's a real element of surprise with everything. You know what I mean? Like, I think he's a little bit superstitious when it comes to that. Even when we're doing, like, the Bad Meets Evil stuff and we're going, like, back and forth on the same verse, he'll lay down the couple lines that he's laying down, and I won't be in the room. And then I'll come in, and I'll hear what he said, and then I'll go add to it, and then he'll leave out of the room while I'm adding to it. And then he'll come in and be surprised. We just work that way. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. So it's kind of like the same way when we're like playing each other music. We're playing each other music. It's like, check this out. I got like a batch of songs that you didn't even know I was working on. He does that to me all the time.
Right. Does that to us.
Yeah, yeah. and then you're gonna learn that joint. I went and played it for him, and my man White Gold was already on the hook, and Marshall really loved the hook. He loved the hook and the beat, but I think the hook made him love the beat a little bit more. And I jumped on that one. I jumped on that one, and then he put a verse on it and rearranged it, and then that's how that happened. But it just kind of fell in place like that. Yeah.
Was that something that deeply affected him at the time? Because it seems to. I mean, the song is a beautiful song. Was that something that he had talked?
The darkness song.
Yeah, the darkness. Excuse me.
I think it did affect him. A lot of these issues affect him. I don't like speaking for him.
No, of course.
But yeah, we didn't have a conversation, a real in-depth conversation about that in particular per se. But just based off of a lot of conversations that we've had, he's very aware of everything that's going on, and he's very affected by things, you know. And he's the kind of artist that he needs to be able to express these things in his music. Otherwise, he can't rap about other things. As long as he has that caveat on his brain, you know, like he's just that kind of guy. He's been like that. He's been like that since he was a kid.
Yeah. There's a line in here I want to highlight because it's one of the first lines on the album that really hit me, and I think in the way that Jay, to go back to Jay in 444, that sort of introduced a lot of ideas. What I think this does is it really dives in very deep to those same ideas and expands upon them. And something I think about a lot, that everyone, when you're talking about success or advice on how to succeed in anything in life, a lot of it refers to like just getting there. There's very little commentary, less commentary on once you're there, all the challenges that you would never think about sort of facing because of success, right? Because success in and of itself, as you know, will present new challenges and new obstacles. And a line in here that I wanted to ask you about was, a rich man wrote this with a poor man's focus.
Yeah.
That's something you got to combat that no one really warns you about. Because as you become more successful, man, you got to stay as close as possible, right? To that quote unquote poor man's focus and that poor man's mentality. Can you talk about that?
Because I honestly believe that the hunger that you have when you just want it all because you never had anything. I believe that's when you come up with your greatest ideas, because you have no idea what the failure feels like. You have no idea what the fame feels like. You have no idea what anything feels like. Everything is just a picture in your mind. So the focus there is by any means necessary. And I believe that the kind of art that I make, it takes that kind of mind frame to be able to achieve it. I've grown with artists, and I'm glad we use JayZ as an example, because each album was just indicative to where he was mentally at the time. You know what I mean? So 444 is the greatest example of just being able to make music that is age appropriate. It's not looking for fame in any type of way. It's not trying to jump in the white hot spot, is what I like to call it. That's like the first spot that we try to go to when we get into the game. But this is what I am. I'm unapologetically honest. I don't mind self-reflecting. I don't mind being vulnerable. I don't mind any of these things, even if you looked at me like Superman in the past, you know what I mean? And that showing that human side, I think resonates in a different way.
It must be just incredibly liberating for you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like a form of therapy. You know, I learned a lot about myself just through the art. You know what I mean? So being able to express myself in that way, and people still being interested in what I got to say, no matter how many people it is, that's not to be taken lightly. You know, I appreciate that, and I look at it like a blessing for sure.
And I'll just say that interest, that continued interest, I think is a testament to your evolution. If you were just giving us the same thing over and over again, I don't know if the interest would be there, but it's just, you always keep us coming back for more because you give us,
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that, man. There's a lot of artists who, there's a few artists who, you know, like their content stays kind of similar, but they keep figuring out new genius ways to do it, like Pusha T. I don't want to hear anything else from Pusha T. I just want to hear him rap like how he raps, and I love it every time. So some guys are just genius in that way, you know, and that's just the beauty of hip hop. It's the beauty of hip hop, and it's finding your way. It's finding what makes you you, what makes you special. What void are you filling, you know? And that's why I put so much emphasis on putting the effort into the art as opposed to the wave. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, big picture. We're going to kick it to Twitter in just a second, but a mutual friend of ours texted me this morning.
Okay.
And he was disappointed he didn't have longer time to talk to you. And he asked me to ask you a question.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yeah, of course.
I'll tell you who it is in the back, but you probably don't know what I'm talking about. What is the status of Bad Meets Evil, and when are we going to get a Bad Meets Evil album?
That's always difficult for me to answer in terms of time, because it's something that literally just can happen during a phone call. You know, Marshall he's that sporadic. You know, it's like, you know what? Fuck it, man. Let's do Bad Meets Evil. You know what I mean? Like, he literally would say something like that. You know, my thing is, I know that he's done with his album. I don't know if he's back in the studio working yet, but I've been telling myself it's somewhere in the back of my brain just to keep myself ready, just in case. Yeah. So in terms of me, I'm ready to go. I got them laced up. I got my snap off pants on. I'm ready to go. All I got to do is pull them off, and all you got to do is put me in the game. I'm ready. You know what I mean? So that's more of a Marshall question, and whenever he's ready, I'll be ready. So don't worry about me prolonging it. If he happens to ask me, don't worry about me prolonging. I got it. Yeah.
You've taken your 1,000 Steph Curry.
Yeah. I put in my 10,000 hours of practice.
Let's kick it to Twitter. This comes from Bishop, and they say, name 3 artists from 3 genres that you would love to work with. 1 hip-hop, 1 R&B, and 3 pop. Or no, sorry. One of each.
1 in hip-hop. JayZ, obviously. R&B, SZA, her, to name a few. I think that they're fantastic. Ari Lennox, I think, is fantastic. I have no desire to work with a pop artist. I'm just being honest. Nothing against pop. I'm just really, really in touch with my hip hop roots right now. I'm having fun expressing myself in a way that's unapologetic and honest and truthful and informative and helpful. And I think when you say pop, it automatically puts a thought in your mind where an artist is looking to go pop, to be popular. And that's just not where I am mentally right now. You know what I mean? Like, I have no desire to be more popular. Right. Being popular did nothing good for me.
And you've always approached collabs, I think, in the proper way. A lot of people try to go collab with someone just because they're hot or they're having a moment where you really collaborate with people seemingly from the outside looking in because you just vibe with them and you just appreciate their work, which I think leads to a better product. Let's get to some fan questions here in New York City. Where's Natasha at?
Right here. Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Any favorite verse that you have written that comes to mind?
You know what? I write so much. I'm to the point now where it's a struggle to even memorize verses now. Okay. You know what I mean? One thing I will say, though, like when I'm working on an album, it has to go. I put every verse on the chopping block, per se, in order to make the album. A lot of times when I'm making songs, I write 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 verses per verse. Like so I have options. Mm-hmm. And I just like to work that way. So each verse, by the time they make the cut, they're all like my babies in different ways. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if I like one more than the other, but I will wake up certain days and go to one song before the other on certain days, and vice versa on other days. You know what I mean? So I try to have that kind of attachment to everything I do before I give it to the people.
Great question. Let's get to Ricardo.
Hey, Royce.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. First, pleasure.
Pleasure.
My question, slightly loaded, was with everything going on in hip-hop today, and I know your colleague Joe talks about this a lot with artist development, and this whole, giving game to up-and-comers or just how to move, not only with the thing we talk about the most, which is financially, but how to move in just business, who you keep around you, things like that. Like, how important do you feel to have that you know, that going on, artist development?
It's very important. It's very important. I think we're seeing the results of it not being there. You know, yeah. So I mean, I think we definitely have that to weigh it against, and it's a slow process. It's a slow process. It's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just one of those things that now that we're noticing it, now that we're aware, more of us are noticing it rather. Now that we're aware, it's just time to start taking steps. You know, one thing that we do in hip hop, especially us with a platform who write raps and sing or just talk in mics for a living, we tend to complain about the state of things first before we take those steps. I just think we're past that point of like kind of like we identify with what the problems are, and let's just start taking those steps. And I'm putting it on us first, the OGs. You know, we have that obligation. We owe the next generation to indoctrinate them with information. You know, show them love, keep their confidence high, make sure that they love themselves, and make sure that they value life. You know what I mean? Like, value the next man's life if you expect someone to value yours. There's so many things that we can instill in them that would prevent crazy things from happening, and it'll start a cycle of amazing things happening. And I think that's one of the things that hip hop was put here for. You know, we took over the world, so we need to wear that.
Right. Thank you.
Great question. All right, Royce, man. Goes by so fast. We're unfortunately out of time, man. You are going on tour, though. Do we have dates yet?
I don't have dates yet, but
Okay.
I'm definitely touring this
That's
one. I didn't get a
coming up.
chance to do Book of Ryan, so yeah, I'm gonna definitely tour
Right
this
on.
album.
All right,
Yeah.
cool, man. Come back anytime, man.
My brother,
Always a pleasure.
love and respect, man. Honor and a privilege
Absolutely.
to be here. Thank
The
you.
Allegory out now, guys. Give it up for Royce 5'9" one more time.
Thank you. Thank you.